Welcome to QuickBooks Online Expert Training. Before I turn it over to Ann, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. Um, we will be posting a copy of this uh, recording, excuse me. We'll be posting a copy, a recording of this will be available on our website at score.org, and more information will be coming on that. Please refrain from putting any of your questions into the chat. We want all the questions to go into the Q&A feature so we can keep track of them better. Um, there's really not a PowerPoint per se. It's really going to be the recording, I think. So, lastly, there will be a brief survey um, to give us any advice on how we could make these any better. So, with that, my name, you can go ahead and flip the slide there, Annie. Yeah, welcome. Okay. Um, this workshop is being sponsored by Score. Um, uh, go ahead and flip it there. Score is a started out as a pretty small organization back in 1964 and currently has the largest network of free volunteers, small business mentors in the nation. We can help any stage of business, whether it's a you want to start a business and you need advice, or you have a business that you need help with that you're having trouble with. And requesting a mentor is pretty easy to do, so we'll get into that. But you can see that the SBA has provided us with a little bit of a kudos here that small business clients who receive 3 hours of mentoring report a higher revenue and increased business growth. That's basically 3 sessions. Most of our mentoring sessions last an hour, so it's a very little bit of time and the benefit is will really help you. Go ahead and flip the slide there, Ann. And just so you know, every year, all of our SCORE mentors, we we have a code of ethics that we have to submit every year to ensure that SCORE members are not benefiting in any way by being part of this confidential counseling. Next, please. Our services are free. And they're, like I mentioned before, they are very confidential. We are a resource partner with the SBA, so they refer people to us when people come to them and they need help, and we kind of send clients to them too when needed. So um, this workshop is being marketed in our region, so there's a lot of people that are not in Ohio or Stark County, where specifically where we're located, but locally, every chapter has a number of mentors, and they each have a very unique business skill set. So, uh, depending upon what type of help you need, we kind of match you up with the right mentor. So, um, is there another slide? I forget. Yeah. So, there's our QR code, score.org to find a mentor or to become a volunteer, and that is where that our recording will be posted at probably I'm guessing by next week sometime. So with that, I think that's all. Lastly, Anne, there are sections in her PowerPoint, and she will pause at the end of each section to answer any questions that appear in that Q&A feature. So as questions come up, put them in there, and we will definitely answer them. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Annie. Annie, it's all yours.
Good morning, guys. My name is Ann Sharp. I am the owner of Excellent Admin, and I'm the one running the seminar today. So today is our third seminar of a four course section here. We are going to talk about a bunch of miscellaneous items today that QuickBooks Online has the ability to do. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is project costing, editing accounts, editing transactions, if we want to create sub accounts. We're going to briefly talk about contractors, which are used a lot inside of QuickBooks. And then we're going to touch briefly on what the payroll feature is. Payroll is not something we teach during this seminar, as it could be its own seminar, but we do show you at least what the portal looks like. Voiding versus deleting, what that does, how that helps us. There's a budget feature inside of QuickBooks if you're in the right subscription, some random miscellaneous tools. We'll go over journal entries when we do them, when we don't, receipts. Obviously the perk of QuickBooks Online is the ability to snap it on your phone and have it right away. The sales tax portal, and then we're going to talk about some reoccurring transactions. Again, why we use them when we don't, okay? So we're going to bounce around a little bit in areas that we've spent the last two classes working in order to do additional features that I would consider customization features for us. Some you guys may use, some you may not, but to know that they're there if you ever decided to do them is awesome. We obviously want to make sure that we get QuickBooks as streamlined as possible, because the entire purpose of QuickBooks Online is the integration and making things simple by doing all of the shortcuts that they offer. So we're going to talk about some of those things today. Okay. So I'm going to minimize the PowerPoint because obviously we teach today by doing, going through QuickBooks on our own. So I'm going to open a new tab here and we're going to go to QuickBooks. So again, we log in and we start our day just on our normal desktop. We'll have wizards because we're new to the QuickBooks world, so we're working through those, okay? And then really what we want to start with is determining if we have project costing in the subscription that we're in. Okay. Some of the things we're going to talk about are in the middle of the road subscription that we picked, that $65 a month one. And some of them we might need to quote unquote upgrade and, go back and forth on it just for training purposes today. Okay. So usually your black navigation bar has a ton of the things that you would want to be looking at. We can look and see here under the like little bubbles here, which ones it might be. It looks like I don't have it in my main navigation bar here, so let's click up here into our other area that we have some stuff. And you can see you have a lot of options to select from, depending what you're trying to do. And again, we've navigated and done a majority of these things already. Just depends on what we're trying to do. So it doesn't show it in that one. Let's just check this one. So it doesn't look like, based on our subscription, what we're looking at for training purposes today, that we have access to the project costing portal in our subscription. So what we would need to do then, guys, is we got to go in and we got to update our subscription. So we need to go up into our little gear icon, which we had open, and go to billing and subscriptions. And like I said, we're on the $65 a month one, but we need to upgrade our plan. And to make sure we get the proper plan, we're going to scroll. I want it to show me what's down here, but it's not actually showing it because of this white bar here. I want to make sure that the one we select obviously has the profit sharing or the project costing. So as you can see here, project costing in the essentials, not eligible. In the plus version it is. So we need to upgrade to the plus version for training today. Again, we've gone through upgrading and downgrading. So again, something we've already done. So you can see we have additional items here that we didn't have before, like budgets. As you can see, it's working on being active in certain areas. And then now up here, we should have our projects. And if we don't, we might have to log out and log back in, but only because we obviously just did the upgrade. And it doesn't show like an option. So let me log out, we'll log back in. To get it to do the upgrade for us. Now, if we go down over here, still not showing here. Just check in to see. Make sure it's not buried inside, since it's usually just populated right here. Let's check this one again. Nope, it's definitely not showing it to us. Okay, so give me 1 second here, guys. Let me see if I can push this through. Because it's supposed to be. Let's do our cheat sheet here. So jump to projects. Okay, so this is the screen that we're supposed to get. And we'll go back out of it and come back into it, because now that I'm using it, maybe it'll populate on this bar over here, because that's usually where it is. So when you look at the PowerPoint has the black bar and then the step-by-step instructions there. Obviously, one of our shortcuts is they've put a search bar in here that you can look up certain things pending what you're trying to find. Keyword wise, I searched projects to open the project module for today. Okay. So your first screen on your project module is an overview. Do you have anything that's in process with certain customers? You can filter by dates, hourly cost, and then you can search by project, okay? Any projects that you have open are going to be showing down here, okay? Now with the feature of projects, you have to tie things to a project. So a project can be named anything you want it to be. And then if you do contractor work or you have bills that go to it, you can tie them to that project by doing so. So we'll go over those steps as we go, because you can do them as you enter the bills and go through that process, or you can do them from just inside of this portal. There are two ways to do that. Okay. So we have no in progress ones. We have nothing canceled. You can look at all the different statuses. Okay. But we do want to create one. So if we go down here or go up here, we should have a get started with projects. Oh, I don't want their wizard. I want to create a project. Hold on a second. That was not helpful. Get rid of the wizard. If refreshing will get it to go away. There it is. Okay. So our button up here. So new project, or you can manage the settings. We would want to do a new project. And we're going to name this project for training purposes today, training. Okay. And then we have a customer in here. We're going to use me as the customer. You can put email addresses in here. That's obviously up to you. I'm going to go ahead and put an email in here. The start date of this project, we'll make it May 1st, since that's when our training seminars did. And the end date, we'll make the 22nd, because that is our last training seminar. Okay. So it is an in progress training. I don't need any additional notes in there. Okay. So I'm going to hit save. So now if we go back to all projects, we now have something listed here, like we were talking about before, that when you had them started, they would be listed here. Okay. You can favorite projects. You can obviously click into them from that screen. And then now we're going to see like an overview of what the project looks like. Okay. Projects can be used not only for individual things that you're actually tracking. In the nonprofit world, they get used for fundraising. If you do payroll time um, costing for your employees to know what projects they're working on, in order for the integration to come into QuickBooks, you need to create a project for the same thing that you have on payroll so that it knows where to put some of this information. So there are a lot of layers to projects. We're going over the most basic layer of them. And then obviously, if you have individual things that you're trying to do with implementation on other additional items with projects, we'll kind of talk about those on one-on-one basis. Okay. So once we look at our overview, we obviously have nothing inside of the projects tab right now. Okay. So we want to look at transactions. So this would be where you can put in invoices, expenses, bills. Okay. So instead of going in through expense, add a bill, and then marking it as a project, you could also just put it in directly here. So another way to do it. Okay. If you enter a bill, it's going to take us to the same screen we were looked at before as far as filling out a bill. Okay. So I think the last time we did a bill for ETC, they helped me make sure my computer was doing what I needed it to do. Obviously, it filled it all out. And then see where it says customer or project. This is what you would fill out that we did not have when we entered bills in the last class. But you now have that option because we have this feature activated inside of QuickBooks. Okay. And again, these are the reasons we talk about starting at the most basic QuickBooks. And then if you realize you need a feature that you don't have, then upgrade. I'd rather not start at the Mac Daddy. You're not using 2/3 of those features. You're paying top dollar for it. And then we end up needing to downgrade and you don't know what you're going to lose. I'd rather you know what you don't have and then be able to get it because you pick the proper subscription at that point. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close on this bill that we created. So now you'll see that I have an open transaction in my project. Okay. You can have time activity. This is for your employees to enter their time. You can hit track time. It's going to take you to the area. We did not set the screen up. That's why we're getting the error here. But normally, if you have it set up, opens a time card for you, and you can select the employee, select the project, and put however many hours in it. Okay. I'm going to hit the back arrow to take us back to our other screen. Okay. Then you have individual reports for a project. You can see if it's profitable. You can track by employee. You can see if there's unbilled time or expenses. So if you click on this, it brings up an actual P&L or report that would have the detail on just that one project. Okay. So a lot of times I see this needing to be used on in the nonprofit world grants. You created a grant as a project, you could absolutely pull that grant report in a matter of seconds from here as long as everything was put in through the project. Okay. So that's a big deal with the difference that they have between donors and customers and things like that. If you're running a specific event and you want to know just what that event made you, this would be a good way to know. Okay. This is a great way for contractors to know if they could bid their jobs enough with how much labor and material cost is swinging back and forth. Okay. Just to keep an eye on it to make sure you're making money because as a business owner, our goal is to make money. Okay. But this is a way to do it based on one little teeny piece of your business. All this data is going into our big financial statements, but this is just by one little piece of whatever that project is that you set up. Okay. You can add attachments. So for that project, you can upload all the papers, proof, receipts, time cards, whatever it is that you have, you can load it all here. Okay. So that all this project is in one spot. And then your project detail is the information we filled out, name of project, person in charge, if it's in progress, those types of things. Okay. Now, what you don't want is you don't want a million jobs to be open all the time. Okay, so if you go back to the overview of this job, now we've got data in here because we created a cost. We have no income, right? It'll tell you if you have invoices that are past due, tells you your profit. Obviously, you can create invoices here. You can activate this hours portal here. You know what I mean? So now that we filled out information, this overview screen has a ton of stuff for us to look at. Okay. Now you can change your status here. Job never went through, job got completed. And if you do that, then you obviously don't see this data. It's considered closed, final, everything like that. Now you can change that and make it, open again for additional things that you might need, but that's up to you. Okay. Now, add to project. Here's a drop down that does kind of the same things as all of this stuff across. So another area to reach it. So you definitely want to pay attention to. Okay. You can edit this to change the name or change the person if the customer changes or email changes or date gets pushed out, any of those types of things. Okay. You can do all of that. And then if you go back to all projects, again, anything that's open is going to be here. Okay. You have your gear icon where you can do certain items or adjust what you see in this module here as far as data, project, customer name, cost versus income. So if I unselect that, it goes away. I select it, it comes back. So you can customize this as well. You obviously can print a list of all your projects. It comes up very basic like this, so that you could go through with your team like, hey, did we finish this? What's going on with this? Where are we at with this? Those types of things. Definitely some options there for it. You can do sub customer. So a sub customer can become a project. This comes into grants and things like that, play into some of this stuff, okay? And then obviously new projects. And then again, you can set cost, you can do certain things, but you have a lot of customization here in projects and they can be used for a various amount of things that can be beneficial. This might not be beneficial if you're a salon, there's not a whole lot of project costing you might be doing. Accounting firms might not be a ton of project costing that you're doing. This is really more for like service-based industries that are paying for material and doing all these big projects, okay? Any questions about projects?
I'm not seeing any, Ann.
Okay. I
Um,
didn't see any in the Q&A either. I just was
yeah,
giving people just a second. Okay. So since
yeah.
we have no questions about projects, which is great, we're gonna keep moving because obviously some things might have more questions than others. So I just want to make sure we stay on pace.
They, uh, Alan, Ellen has placed a couple questions into the chat regarding untying projects. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. But Ellen, we're trying to put all questions in the Q&A, so they don't disappear. So going forward, that would be great. So Annie, can you
Yep.
address that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Ellen, when you say you need to undo a project, can you give me a little bit more detail in the Q&A section for me? How do you pool revenue sources so that they fall under one project? Okay. So if you are looking underneath sales and you go to create an invoice, or you can edit an invoice. I'm just going to create it because we didn't have this feature when we went over creating invoices last time. Okay. Underneath the customer. So if we did Ann Sharp as the customer, and then we did product and service, we're just gonna call it bookkeeping. We're gonna make it an even 100. Let me see. We need to manage this. It should have put in the customer or donor in here so that we can select the project to tie this to. And it's not doing it from this screen. So let me save and close this for a second. And then let's go back into projects. And then I'm going to create an invoice here. Oh, because it needs to, so it doesn't have it here, but okay, so that's why. So you need it to be to the project name, not the customer name, in order for it to tie through the project. So let's go back to our sales portal here and let's edit this. View and edit. And so we need this to be training. So see how it has a customer and then it has the sub customer. And then go out of the saving module here and go back into projects. And you can see now that it's tied right here. So your invoices must be created to the sub customer, the project name of what you're working with. Carolyn, let me know if that doesn't make sense. Okay. So Ellen says, I have a customer in projects. How can I remove them? They were initially migrated. It automatically set a customer up with multiple sites as a project. I don't want that. I need to undo the projects if possible. So if you go to all projects and you want to click on opening that project, and then we want to hit edit, you could change the name of the project if you wanted to. Honestly, if you just want to get rid of them, I would just do the drop down next to the name of the project and hit cancel. And then if you go back to all projects, it's gone. So Ellen, let me know if that, by hitting cancel to remove the project, if that does what you need on your end. Kate, you are correct. It could be a sub guarantee is another term for it as well, pending which QuickBooks, online portal is you're in and what upgrade they're through and those types of things. Inside of here, it called it a sub customer. That's why I'm using that reference because that's what we saw on the actual screen. Harry, I'm going to leave your question in the chat for now. We will come back to talking about inventories and things like that if we have time at the end. Otherwise, I'll have you reach out to me one-on-one. Okay. So now that we've answered all our questions about projects, we're going to move on to our next item we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about editing accounts. Okay. You can edit so many things inside of QuickBooks Online. So this is going to seem kind of monotonous in some of the things we're going to go over. I just want to talk about as many areas of editing that I can so that you can, get through some of those things that might change. Names change, credit cards change, account numbers change, those types of things. Okay. So first place we're going to go is under transactions. We're going to go to our chart of accounts. So chart of accounts is either cash, credit cards, loans, or any of the accounts we're actually categorizing to. And if you click the little down caret arrow here, you can click edit to any of these accounts. And you can change the names, you can change the type of accounts, you can put a description in, those types of things. Whatever you decide to do, you just have to remember to hit save, and then it will automatically update your name. Put a -1 just to show a change, okay? If I were to go down here and I want to look at telephone expense, and I'm just going to search for simplicity purposes to use our search module again, okay? I want to hit my little down arrow and I want to hit edit. Okay, so telephone is considered an expense that's categorized under utilities. I would like to make it a sub-account of utilities. So that's the change I'm making to this one. I want to make it a sub-account of utilities, okay? What that means is that I am going to have a gross or a large number for all my utilities totaled together, but then I have sub-accounts for the utilities that I want to monitor individually. So my trash bill, my cable bill, my gas bill, my electric bill, my telephone bill. But then I have a total number called just utilities, and that utility number could be 3,500, but it's broken up by what makes that 3,500. Okay. So that's how we edit chart of accounts. That's the first thing we want to edit. Second thing we want to edit is transactions in general. So go here, go to bank transactions. So you can edit them in a couple ways. So we have categorized some transactions for training purposes today, right? So if I go ahead and I click undo, that's going to kick the transaction back here for review so that I can edit it. Okay. I can also go into the bank register here and I can click on a transaction and click edit. I can put more detail here. I can change the account. I can change the name. I can change where it came from. Again, because we just added this project module, we can do the projects if we need to assign it appropriately. You can put a different memo in. You can add an attachment if you forgot. Okay. So we can edit the transactions. I'm going to hit save. You can go into the expenses here and you can edit any expenses that you need to edit. So if you click on it, here's activity that you would have categorized here. Again, you can open it to edit. You can also edit the vendor name. If something changes, you make a typo while you're going through it. Those types of things happen as well. Again, just type directly into the screen. If you need to add in proper addresses because you didn't do it the first time, you need to attach a document, any of this information. That's one way we can edit. Okay. You can obviously edit your bills. Depending what you need, open the bill. And again, go in and edit. Customers, same thing. Obviously, customers might be something we edit quite often because people's addresses change, their terms might change, any of those types of things. So you want to click on the customer, you want to click edit, and then we didn't put an address in, but let's put an address in. And then hit save. And now you'll see that it updated right away to the things we put in. So everything that you're updating is an instantaneous edit inside of QuickBooks Online. Just like it would be in desktop, they're all instantaneous. Lots of things that we can edit, lots of things we can adjust, just something to think about as you're going through with all the changes that are going to be happening with customers and things like that as well. Okay. Any questions about edits? It looks like we might have one. Nope, that's the same one I'm leaving in there for now.
And Kate did put a question in chat.
Okay.
We have a lot of problems with bills creating duplicates to transactions because they don't match. What are some of the things they could do? And Kate, hey, all questions need to go into Q&A, not chat. So just moving forward, just an FYI.
Kate, there's two ways to check this. When the transaction is syncing in, I know QuickBooks doesn't always match it for you. But when you're looking at your transactions, if you know that you cut checks or pay bills, then when the transaction is sitting here, you want to click on it and open it. and then try to force match it by clicking match instead of categorize. And then it should bring up in this screen any bills that were paid within a year of that time frame, and then you can select the proper items. If they're not populating here, um, make sure you're working in the same bank account. That would be my first area, like maybe they were cut out of a different bank account. The other way you could do it is you could go to your bank register, and when you're looking down here to see if the transactions are in, the transactions that you would have cut checks for that are not matching anywhere, see how these have double squares? The ones that don't match anywhere that you cut won't have double squares. So it'll be really easy to tell which transactions are the ones you actually paid versus what's coming through the bank account. And you can still select these in your reconciliation screen, and then just don't add the ones that are sitting in this screen for to be categorized. Because what's creating the duplicates is you're adding them without matching them, and you've already entered them. So you probably have a ton of stuff sitting in your reconciliation screen. So and I'll go to it just for reminder here. You have a ton of stuff sitting in this screen because some of them have this check mark that say they're from the bank feed, and some are ones that you cut checks for or paid inside of here, and you're duplicating them because they're not tying together. So Kate, you can see the double boxes in the reconciliation screen or just in your bank register. And the R means that you selected it in a reconciliation. A C means that it's cleared tentatively because you're working on a reconciliation. And blank means you haven't done anything with it yet. And obviously you see how you hover and it tells you what it is. If you hover over the green double square, it says added from the bank feed, so that, it's a kind of a giveaway on those. Okay. You got to teach yourself kind of where to look. That's the big thing with those. But Katie, it's really important with the matching transactions or matching bills in general to eliminate those duplicates. And if for some reason you end up adding them and you've already got them and they didn't match together, then you want to probably delete what's coming from the bank feed, because it may or may not be categorized properly, where what you would have put in order to cut checks would be done properly. So you have to make that decision internally. But you don't want a ton of stuff sitting in the reconciliation screen. So that's the big one. Okay, it looks like we have a couple other questions here. Can you talk a little bit about editing reconciled transactions? Seems like every edit gets a caution pop up, but only the amount should matter. So, John, QuickBooks Online is fabulous for notifying you of things that you are doing and warning you, because once you do them, a lot of times you can't undo them. So they want to give you the pop-ups, the caution pop-ups, like, hey, we'll let you do this, but just so you know, this is already reconciled. Or hey, we'll let you do this, just so you know, this was linked to another bank account, bank transaction. Or hey, you can do this, but this is tied to a bill payment. A lot of times they're the pop-ups that you get. If you're editing a reconciled transaction, uh, odds are if it's reconciled, QuickBooks makes the assumption, and I use the word assumption here, that it's done. You shouldn't need to do anything else with it. So if you're editing it, it's warning you, because if you've reconciled, you shouldn't need to do anything else with it. Meaning reconciliation is kind of your final step in what you're doing. The check cleared for the proper dollar amount on the proper day in that proper month, right? Best example to come up with. So if you're editing it, you got to figure out why you're editing it. Now, if you're editing it because you're adding attachments and stuff like that, yes, the pop-up warnings are kind of silly, but it's just, it's everybody gets it because some people delete transactions by accident. Now, when you get 2 or 3 warning pop-ups and you tell me you deleted it by accident, you had to click through the 2 or 3 warnings to delete it. So either you weren't paying attention to what you were doing, or you deliberately knew what you were doing and then realized that you just made a mistake, which is okay. Anything that you do inside of QuickBooks, you can find again or redo, right? So it's not a huge deal. If the transactions are reconciled, like I said, they have an R here. They obviously do not show up in this screen any longer because you've already reconciled them. Okay. If you go into your reconciliation screen and you look at history by account, you can see we did one reconciliation for training purposes. Your reconciled transactions will populate on this report as well. If you delete a transaction that was reconciled and then need to go try to reconcile, you're going to get a warning that says that you can't do that. Something's wrong. Okay. So if you go into reconcile and you go here, it says my last statement was this day and my beginning balance was this. But had I deleted something, you would get a warning right here. It tells you your beginning balance does no longer matches because you did something, you made a change. And then you can go through and see what that change was. But you can't always bring it back, depending on how the transaction was entered. So you might have to redo work while you're figuring it out. So it's really kind of important that you try not to mess with reconciled transactions if you can help it. Obviously, if you categorize something in like ask my accountant because you needed to get the reconciliation done, but then you finally got results on what that actually was or got a receipt for it, then obviously you're going to edit that. You're not editing the amount, you're just editing where it goes, and that's okay. It's still going to warn you though. Nothing we can do about it. Says once an estimate has been created and saved, how do you insert a line within the body of the estimate? It seems you can only add lines at the end of the body of the estimate. You can only add them at the bottom, but you can drag them. So if you go into sales and we go into estimates and let's create an estimate. And this is way too much going on the screen. Okay, so you can take this line and drag it up and down. See how that moves? So yes, it will always add at the bottom, but then if you need to shift what order it was in, you can push it and it will renumber and put that information there. So I'm going to put bad debt here at the top and put a -100. And then I'm going to put bookkeeping for 100 so that it's a 0 invoice, right? But I wouldn't want bad debt first. It's just the order my brain was thinking today. So I want to flip them. And that's what you would do. You can do the same thing inside of invoices, guys. That's another customization feature, obviously. Somebody asked, do you small businesses normally close each month to prevent changes or wait until the end of the year? That is a internal preference. At a minimum, most people will try to close at the end of the year once the tax return is filed and the adjustments have been made. But that's totally a preference internally, pending how many transactions you have, how many mistakes you've had to go back and correct, and those types of things. Kate, the Ask My Accountant option is an account inside of your chart of accounts that you would use, and it's just a way to throw questionable transactions in to get them in, and then remind yourself that you had questions about those transactions. So Gwen says I started QuickBooks in 2025, but I had an expense in 2024 that cleared in 2025. I do not want the expense on 2025, but I want the cash going out in 2025. How do I handle this? You have to put the transaction in, but date it to like 12/31 of 2024 so that it will populate on your reconciliation screen to show the cash is leaving, but will not deduct the expense on your P&L in 2025. And Gwen, if you need more help than that, we can work on that kind of one-on-one. Okay, so we're going to take a break on questions and keep kind of moving along. So we're going to go into our next one, which is talking about um, sub accounts. Why do we use them? Where do they come into play? So subaccounts is something that I use for transaction categorization to help organize my financial statements. Okay. So for example, you might have credit cards, and then on your balance sheet, you would have all your individual credit cards that you might have. American Express, Citibank, Bank of America, Chase, whatever it is, right? So those would become sub-accounts of the main account called credit card. Okay. So then if you were trying to share your financials with somebody, you could just minimize that so that it only shows credit cards with the total balance versus telling them all the detail of how many credit cards you have as a business. Okay. Same goes for loans. You're going to have all your loans listed out, how many loans you have for what certain items, right? But you could minimize it and make it all just for there's a lump sum loans. Okay. You want to use them on the flip side for the expenses you're categorizing too if you want to track certain things. So for example, vehicle expense is a big one because you either write off the vehicle expense or you're writing off the mileage, whichever is the greater of the two, right? So underneath your vehicle, you're going to have fuel, you're going to have license and registration, you're going to have insurance, you're going to have repairs and maintenance. So you have 4 buckets that would go underneath the vehicle. But if you wanted to show somebody your financials, you don't have to show them the 4 buckets. You could just show them a vehicle expense, but then you know at least what it is. Okay. Another example, insurance. We're going to have vehicle insurance. You're going to have business insurance. You might have workers' comp, which is an insurance, depending where you're located. You're going to have, other options under health insurance. So your insurance is your main account and your sub account is underneath. Okay. Again, it just organizes what you want to see from a detailed perspective, but can put things into buckets. Okay. So we're going to look at insurance as our example today. So we have health insurance, we have life insurance, we have workers' comp, we have just insurance. Then you can see here, they'd put sub accounts here of business insurance, liability insurance, property insurance, rental insurance, insurance claims, homeowner insurance, and vehicle insurance. So you can see that QuickBooks tries to tell you that they can do some of these things, right? So health insurance, I would want to edit this. It has health insurance underneath equity. I want to change it to an expense and change it to an expense. Yes. I want to make it a sub account of insurance. And I want this to be changed to insurance. Okay. And I can hit save. So now our health insurance that was up there is now down here. Okay. So when we pull our financial statement, if we have something in every one of these buckets, you're going to see every one of these lines on it. Okay. Workers' comp, I said could be under insurance. I personally prefer it under payroll. So you can see I put it under payroll. I don't want it to be a parent account of employee benefits by any means. I want it to be let's see here, payroll expense. So then let's look at payroll, see what our options are here. So company taxes, we need to make this a sub account of payroll expense to organize a little bit better. So this is something that you can do once you've, obviously started figuring out what you want to see. These can be done at any point. They will reformat everything all the way back to the beginning of time, make your life a lot organized. Okay. So you have payroll expense, company taxes, wages, workers' comp. And honestly, we should put the processing fee under payroll expense. And then this one we can edit. I need that to be a sub account. Okay. So you created them. You can see the main account and the sub account. So then let's go look at like a report and ignore my wizards here. So utilities, telephone. So if I do this, I can see just the total for utilities. Under supplies, there's supplies and material. Again, you can just do that. Payroll, you put a payroll fee in. Again, you can have just payroll. So that's the goal of the sub accounts is you can see the detail if you want to, you can hide the detail if you don't. But you can see how we're starting to organize our financial statements here based on what we've got going on. You can do the same thing for cost of goods sold. Now, sub-accounts are used in the chart of accounts, and then sub-accounts can be used under customers or in the nonprofit world, donors. Okay, so you definitely want to pay attention to um, the customers and the sub-customers. So, for example, if you get a federal grant, the federal grant name is your customer, and then say you're funded for multiple years, your sub-customer is going to be the years of which that funding happened, 24, 25, 26, right? Because you have a budget that you're trying to pull against to do those funds. If you get a grant or get funding or donations from somebody year over year over year, you might have the somebody donated name and then the years they donated underneath his sub. As you saw with projects, when you create projects, they become quote unquote sub customers. Okay. So if you go to customers and leads, you can create a new customer and then see how it says is a sub customer of whomever. It creates another layer for organization purposes. You could do this if you have multiple locations for a customer as well. And you can see here, main customer, sub customers indented. So it's still very obvious when you're looking at your screen about sub accounts. Any questions about sub accounts, why we would use them? Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and take our first 10-minute break. Let's take it now because the next section that we're going to get into is the contractors and payroll. I know there'll be a ton of questions, and that'll be a little bit chunkier of a section. So let's take our little first 10-minute break now. So we'll come back at 10:03. And then if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. We'll answer those when we first get back, and then we will jump back in talking about contractors and payroll. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get jumped back in. So it looks like we didn't have any questions in the Q&A section. So I'm going to go ahead and get right back into it then. So we're going to talk about contractors and payroll, okay? So if you go over here and you look at payroll, you'll see that there are a bucket called employees versus contractors, okay? We did not activate the payroll portal in our subscription that we were playing with. So we are not going to see a lot of things inside of the payroll portal. Okay. Payroll is its own animal. There are different buckets and different packages that tell you what QuickBooks does as far as payroll goes. And then obviously you can integrate and payroll to be, direct deposited, all those types of things. Okay. You can see here, they kind of try to prompt you through what you're looking for, and then obviously start to prompt you based on how much it costs. They're obviously running deals. I have no control over those deals. I'm by no means the salesperson for QuickBooks, obviously. They have different versions of the payroll. So know that this is an option here. Again, this can be an area that can cause duplicate transactions inside of your QuickBooks because the transactions are going to be put in as soon as you run your payroll in your ledger. And then obviously when the funds actually leave the bank account, you need to make sure that they're matching versus categorizing twice. Just another area to pay attention to. Again, integration is key. Obviously, payroll is for employees. If you're going to pay a contractor, we'll work in the contractor tab. There's a couple ways to do the contractors here. Um, I personally don't recommend doing payroll by yourself. It's a huge liability, and if you make a mistake, it's a very unforgiving area of your business. So if you're going to do it, I would say spend the money and do it. Let them do it where they handle all the risk. Um, This is great if your people use the keep system inside of QuickBooks as well, obviously. It defeats the purpose if you're having to manually enter things in there as well. So just some options there, but the payroll portal is here. You can set up employees. You can manage the taxes. They do direct deposit. Again, and then you have your options as far as packages go, and then there's more detail down here, okay? The tab we're going to spend the most time in is going to be contractors. So if we click contractors, we can create a team of contractors. Okay. So contractors are people that are doing work for us on their time and their location based on a project you assign them. Okay. A contractor is anybody that you're paying or anybody's business that you're paying. Um, it you are required to issue proper documentation to that person pending how much they get paid in a year. Okay. You should still have on record all of the proper paperwork, whether you're going to issue the documentation or not, just for audit purposes. Best part about QuickBooks is it allows you to try to collect some of it virtually. Okay. And those of us that are old fashioned and have it on paper, I'm one of those people, just so we're on the same page. You can load it into QuickBooks so that it's still in both places, virtually and paper. Okay. So we're going to follow the wizard and go through the exercise of let's add a contractor in this side of it. Then I'm going to show you on the other side of it when you're looking at vendors, because vendors are also contractors in some semblance, right? That if you have them categorized properly, they will populate on both sides. Okay. So let's add a contractor. So to add a contractor, they want you to do a name and an email. Okay. If you are not going to send the invite, you can skip the email feature. So we're going to say that my husband is going to be the contractor. And I'm going to show you what the email looks like that they get and everything like that. Okay. And it wants to send me a code for safety purposes. Six, 63962. Okay. So now you'll see that you have requested personal detailed information from this person, okay? You can send them reminders if they do not do it for you, okay? You're going to see the detail about the person. There's no detail because we haven't filled it out yet. Then you're going to see payments when you pay them. Boom, they're going to populate here. And then once they do it, their documents, the one document you need on contractors, a W-9, is going to be populated right here, okay? So then let's go into, I'm going to open my email so that you guys can see what the end user's getting so that you can obviously educate your contractors. Contractors can be tricky sometimes, I won't lie, guys. Sometimes they don't want to fill out the proper paperwork. And so I would encourage you to tread lightly and make sure that they get the proper paperwork. But obviously, you really shouldn't pay anybody until you have the proper paperwork. I'm going to hit refresh. Try to get it to populate because it's going to come right in here. Oh, it went to my junk folder. So let's move this into my inbox. So obviously tell people if they can't find it to look for their junk folder. Did that not move? No, it moved. Let me see if it's in my inbox, not. Yep, okay. All right. So it says excellent admin training needs your W-9 info. Please create a free account and let's get the details. So let's go ahead and click get started. Thinking. Just making sure there's nothing behind it since it's not, doesn't look like it's moving. One more step. Okay. Well, it's not letting me actually get through. Let's see. Let's see if it'll let me do it this way. Gonna send me a verification code. 8988061. I'm gonna have it email a code right down here to our email. Looks like it's taking a minute. Well, maybe it's just not going to do it for me today. All right. We'll have to skip it since it's not coming through. We'll give it a second to see if the email comes through. So we'll leave it open. We'll go back over here. So you can also edit and write checks. You can create an expense or create a bill with a contractor, okay? And then you can make them inactive and they'll go away. All right. Now, the perk of using this screen for contractors is obviously you have the direct deposit feature, which you do not have if you do it as a vendor right away. Okay. You also have the ability to see everything that you pay them right here versus going digging for it. Okay. Now, if I go over here and I go into my expenses and I look at my vendors, and for training purposes, I'm going to search my husband because he will be in this list now. See? And say I create a new transaction and I cut him a check. And again, we're working inside of the vendor screen. And we're going to say this is categorized as professional services. And we're going to pay him 500. Okay. So under our vendors, my husband's here. Here's the check we paid him. Okay. You go back over to payroll, go back to contractors. You can see now that husband is here. Okay. If I open it and I look at payments, there's the same check. So they sync side by side. But if you don't set it up as a contractor, you won't see it on this side. But you have the data obviously on the vendors. So the perk of using the contractor side is it's one place to keep everything together to make sure you issue all the tax documents you need to at the end of the year. It's also a way to make sure you have proper documentation on people. Okay. Now you can do it if you go back over here again to expenses and go to vendors and you search. ETC was another vendor we were working with that just out of, brain. Okay. And you click edit. You can attach their W-9 right here inside the vendor side. And you could say you need it to be tracked for 1099s. Okay. If you put them on the contractor side, it's automatically going to track it. If you set them up as a vendor because you're not going to use the contractor side, then you have to make sure this box is checked. And obviously you can fill out all the information you would get off the W-9 and still attach it. Okay. You can have all the information on your contractors and not have a W-9 and technically not be compliant. You need that form, that paper form. I know it seems silly. It's just the way it is. It gives you name, address, EIN, or social, and they sign off agreeing to being a 1099. That's why it's important. Okay. Any questions about contractors? How you set them up? What does it mean? You saw that you can add them on both sides. They show up. Looks like we do have a question here. They said, we recently took a business trip. Do I run per diem through payroll or like a contractor payment? I would run it on payroll if you're already running payroll. Just keeps it cleaner. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. So now we're going to talk about voiding versus deletion inside of QuickBooks. Okay. We briefly talked about invoices when it came to voiding them to keep the detail but eliminate the cost associated with them. But we're going to talk about why do we void versus delete. Okay. There are different instances for things that we're going to do these items with. So, for example, if you go into transactions and you go into bank transactions, if you go to the categorized transactions and you click undo, undo is like the delete feature of this window. Okay. But it doesn't really delete them because they're integrated. So, meaning the transaction came in from the login credentials you put in from your bank account. So it goes into the for review tab. Then you categorize it and it goes in the categorize tab. So if you undo it, undo again in air quotes, the delete button on this screen, okay, it kicks them back to the for review. So for example, 264 transactions. I'm going to undo a transaction. So now you have 265 transactions to prove that it goes back that way. Okay. So deleting a synced transaction is fine because it's going to repopulate in this screen. Deleting a transaction that you manually imported is fine. It's going to go back to this screen. Okay, if you imported. Again, refresher of import. Here, import data. Select what type of data you're importing. Bring it through. Okay, going through this step of manually importing. Why do we manually import? Because our bank has a security feature or a 3 login authentication that cannot be compatible with QuickBooks Online syncing, or we just don't feel comfortable logging in. Okay, you can import that way as well. You import obviously too if you're going so far back that you need to do the import. Okay. So if you undo or delete those transactions, they go into the for review tab. If you go into your bank register, so go to your bank register, and we're going to talk about not having these bubbles again, and you manually enter a transaction and you delete it, it's gone. It does not go to a for review tab. It's completely gone because it didn't come in anywhere but where you put it. So that's why when you're deleting, it's really important to pay attention to what you're deleting. Okay. Again, an invoice, can you delete it? Sure. If you delete it though, you lose it all. You have no record of what that work was done inside of QuickBooks. If you void it, you zero it, meaning you know you're not going to get paid or whatever, we lost the project or whatever, but you have the detail on what was the scope of work that was going to be completed, even if you didn't get it. Same for estimates. You don't want to delete an estimate because then you don't have any history of it. You want to void the estimate or say it didn't go through, it wasn't approved, right? To stop it from sitting in there as a flow, but keeps the detail of what the project was because maybe 5 months down the road, somebody comes back to you and says, I didn't want to do that, but now I do. Or I didn't have the money then and now I do, right? So again, if you go under invoices and you click edit and view, underneath more actions, you have delete or void. If you need to keep the detail, you definitely want to void, just zeros it out. If you don't need any detail, you don't care if it totally disappears, then delete it up. Again, invoices are created only in here. So if you delete them, they're totally gone. If there's payments applied, they sit in limbo. They have nowhere to go. It's totally confused. It'll give you lots of warnings. It's just the way it works. Okay. You can do the same thing when it comes to expenses. So if you go under bills, you see we have these random bills that we put in here. Okay, so if I click on a bill, you can delete it. It'll totally go away. Okay. It's something that you've entered on your own. So again, if you delete it, it totally goes away. It does not have a void option for bills though. So your option is to delete. Because if you didn't pay a bill, odds are you're deleting it anyways. Okay. And you can see that it's been viewed and all that fun stuff. Okay. Any questions about voiding versus deleting? I use a tax accountant to do my 1099s, but it is more practical to do them in QuickBooks. Angie, your tax accountant could be running them inside of QuickBooks, or could be using an outside software. Whether or not you do them through QuickBooks, you want to make sure that people are set up properly in QuickBooks to make pulling the numbers at the end of the year easier for you. But QuickBooks has a wizard to do 1099s that makes it it's really simple. So it just depends on if you want the hassle at the end of the year or the liability. Using a tax accountant to do them, they take the liability of any errors, or missing a deadline and things like that. You doing them, that's your liability. So it's again totally a preference up to you. There's no right or wrong. I create tons of 1099s for simplicity purposes. I do not use the QuickBooks wizard per se, because I have my own software that creates my own forms and things like that instead of buying the paper and having to feed it through a printer. But I still make sure my clients are set up in here properly to make the data to know how much they paid somebody at the end of the year very easy to find. So it says, how do you match a credit card payment to an actual bill? If the bill exists and you don't pay the bill, but it was paid as mentioned, so now you have a payment to show up, but the bill still shows that it's owed. So this is again, if you go underneath the transaction tab where the payment cleared, okay, and you're clicking on said payment and you click match, filter by, and you can put bills, open bills, checks, bill payments, expenses. So open bills would be what you select. Make sure it's dated properly, depending how long the bill's been open. And then that credit card or bill that you have should populate here and you can click it to apply that payment to that bill. And then it should show the adjustment to the bill on how much you owe, whether you paid it off or paid a partial payment. Perfect. So now we're going to talk about the budget tool. Okay. The budget tool is something that some of us might use. Most of us small business owners might not use, but it is a really cool tool that we can implement that will make our life a lot easier. My nonprofits and bigger clients do use this tool, because they spend time creating all sorts of numbers on what they need to do. And it can tie into another use for projects. I'm going to use air quotes on that and I'll explain it kind of as we get there. So again, for simplicity purposes, you can look up here to find the budget. And it'll bring you to your overview, okay? Budget is also located in the black bar. And look, hey, projects is now located in the black bar, which was not here before, but is now. So once you use tools, or it takes a minute for the portal to update when we made those changes, you can see it now, okay? So budgets. Now we have our little wizard because we have not created a budget before. So I'm gonna hit create budget and we'll go through there, okay? Most budgets are based off of profit and loss statements. So how much are you anticipating to bring in versus how much you're going to spend out, and either make money or break even or be good, right? You can do it as a consolidated format. You can have it select a pre-fill if you have data from previous. We don't, so there's no need to pre-fill, okay? And then you can set up customized budget. You can import a budget, okay? I'm gonna hit next. So our budget, based on what we selected, meaning no pre-fills, no customization, no nothing, is going to be for this calendar year, 2025. It's going to show what we actually spent in 2025, and it's breaking it down by month, okay? So your actuals of 2025, pending, you can see there are numbers in here because we've actually done some of it, okay? And then we need to fill in budget numbers, okay? Now, the budget feature is pulling from our chart of accounts. So if we have an item in chart of accounts, that's our list of all our income, all our loans, all our expenses, all our bank accounts, everything we're categorizing, okay? It's showing here under accounts, whether we use it or not. You can see zeros and still showing them, okay? So you want to maybe clear out your chart of accounts to delete accounts that you're not going to use or make inactive so they don't have to populate here, okay? Because as you can see, when it populates every one of these accounts, this report is rather long, okay? Now, you can type in each individual month and it's going to start creating a total, or you can say for the whole year, I expect to spend 50,000 in materials, and it's going to equally divide it up, okay? So you can work in here. It's auto saving. So you don't have to worry about, oh my God, did I save it? Did it go? Okay. You can export it down to Excel or a PDF to not have to scroll up and down, make it easier to see. Okay. You can change it to look at quarters, year versus monthly. This is again some of the features you have to play with inside of here. Okay. You can use your search feature to find certain things you're looking for. You can clear the data pretty easily. It's not going to let me do it because I haven't saved it yet. If you do select an account, you can clear all of it, clear only certain lines if you know you made a typo, copy data. Again, shortcuts. There are shortcuts all over the place in here, okay? Um, from this screen, you cannot import it. You needed to import it from the previous screen. So if those of us already have budgets, we want to import the data in instead of manually typing it, absolutely 1000% recommend, okay? It's a really cool feature. You can also rename it. Not everybody's fiscal year is January through December. Some of them are June to June. So, you know, you want to change what you're doing based on your settings inside of QuickBooks, your proper periods will calculate. You can obviously see it keeps it'll keep future ones as you're creating them, and it keeps historical ones for a little bit, so you have the ability to look at it. And then you can copy one and roll it forward and then make adjustments that way. You can tell it to hide empty rows. So if there are zeros, it will hide, it can come, hide them. So then the budget, as you see, gets a lot smaller. But when you export it, it's even though they're hidden, it's still going to show that data. Okay, but it does make this screen easier to see. Okay. I'm going to hit save and close. And now you can see inside of my main budget home screen, I have the budget we created. Okay. And you can see who modified it last, again, based on users that we talked about in the past. If you need to import a budget, you can tell it what time frame you're importing. Hit next, and then again, it tells you to upload the budget based on whatever it is that you're trying to do, okay? And this must be a Excel format based on the abbreviations it's giving you. And again, you can go back to it by just clicking on it, make any additional edits. You can see it brought all the accounts back, whether they're zeroed or not. So you can use budgets for the whole year. You can use budgets based on specific items you're trying to track. Okay. So budgets again can be treated for um, a grant or a project. You can do the same type of thing. The downfall is that you're going to have all the data for everything that's showing on your P&L categorized that could populate as the actuals for the items that you're trying to do. So it's not as independent and is more of a high level view versus individual projects like the project bucket is, but it's set up to do the same type of thing. Now it looks like we have some questions, so let's go ahead and take these questions. It says, is there a way to create the budget using classes instead of the chart of accounts? Sadly, not that I'm aware of in all my experience with using this. There is a way to pull your actual numbers by class, which we haven't talked about yet, uh, that you can then, have the detail by class on your P&L to show what you are actually, and then you can compare it manually to a budget. But as far as this, there is no way to do that. Do budget parent accounts or sub accounts only? You could do both. You can do both. So if you look here under employee benefits, you have the retirement as a sub account. So you can have a total for this and then break it up based on all of these, or all of these will total underneath the total for you. But you can do both sub accounts or main accounts, either one. So Carolyn says, can you show me how to do it yearly? So up here on the right-hand side where it says monthly, quarterly, here's yearly. So you would put your budget numbers in and then it'll show you what your actuals are. So it says, I can't find the budget option in my toolbar. Where did you find this? So remember, if you are, it could be that you're not in the proper subscription to have budget, or if you can't find it, go ahead and use your little search icon up here in the top of the corner or top middle of the screen towards the right-hand side, and you can type in budget and see if it comes up. Yes, you can import any Excel file that you need. And then once you get to the next screen, like we talked about when we imported transactions, it might have you map where they go so that you are filling out the proper columns into the proper areas. But yes, any Excel document, correct. It says when creating a budget to upload, what format is needed to upload it appropriately? I would use the same format that you see on the budget screen. So you would have accounts and then a number. And if you're doing it by month, then you could have accounts, the month name, and then there's numbers filled in. And I would import it exactly like that. It says, can you set up a budget for a grant/project to compare projected versus actual? Yes, you're just going to have a lot of data in there that you're not going to need. Because unless your organization only runs one grant or one project, this budget feature is pulling everything that's categorized no matter what, where the project feature is only pulling for something that's specifically set up. So that is the individualized report versus the budget is the full picture. So from the budget screen, you cannot only show the grant. You would see everything inside of this budget screen. The only time you can only show the grant is if you're in the project field and you create it as if it's a project, or you run a custom report, which we will talk about later. Um, as a specialty item. So Jeff, the budget report is only for items that are deductible. The principal payments on debt are not a deduction. So those principal payments actually go on the balance sheet, which is not shown here. So the only part of debt payments that you would be making that would show on here are going to be the interest payments. So Jeff, they do not, let me minimize this before I finish that thought. Let me hit save here. So if you create a budget, you want to do it here. You select balance sheet. We were in the P&L, so you have to select balance sheet and then how frequently you want it. And then you hit next. This is going to show everything off your balance sheet chart of accounts, but this is where you would then say that you made the payments for the debt. So you would have two running budgets, Jeff. Does that make sense? Mm. So it says if I create a budget that only has accounts I want to see and map it to the correct accounts, will only those accounts show up on the budget? You can tell it to hide the zeroed accounts or the non-used accounts. As far as the budget goes, that's your best feature to get it to not show up on the budget. But when you pull the export, I don't know. Well, let's try it, I guess. Let me go out of here. I don't know if it'll do it without. So I want to hide empty rows. That's what she's asking. So the empty rows would be the accounts she doesn't want to see. And if I export this to Excel, let's see if it only shows me the active stuff or if it shows me everything. It shows me everything, even when I don't show me the inactive rows. So no, there's no way to just only do the things you're trying to look at. I mean, you can see it on this screen, but when you export it, it doesn't do it. Let's see if it does it with a PDF. Yeah, see, it shows all the zeroed accounts with the PDFs too. So sadly, no. The answer is no, not that I'm aware of. You can create it to what you see on this screen, but as far as when you're porting the data out to use it, it is not going to only show that. And as soon as you log out of here, it's going to bring them all back. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. She's asking if she imports the budget, will it only show the accounts that she's importing? I do not believe so. I still think it's going to pull everything to tie what you're importing to. With the chart of accounts, it's going to match what it can and not what it can't, but everything that you have in chart of accounts, even if it's not on the import, is going to show on this screen. So that is all the good stuff about the budgeting tool. Again, not everybody uses it for it. This is obviously something that's seen more in the nonprofit world, but definitely something that we want to get done. And we want to know that it's here. And again, you got to make sure you're in the right package in order to be able to use it. Okay. So we had a couple questions through the budgeting module about classes. So I want to talk about what classes are. You have to be in this version of QuickBooks, so this $99 a month version to have classes, okay? What classes are items that business owners want to see segmented to show a difference in how much they make on a class versus a project. So I tend to see this when there's more than one location in a business, or in the nonprofit space, you might sort it by admin, marketing, um, fundraising, grants, you know what I mean? Those types of things would be your classes, okay? So, how do we find out if we have classes? Well, we know up until today we were not in a proper subscription to have classes. So, we don't have any. There's a couple ways to get classes set up. So, first of all, you have to go into your gear icon and you have to go to accounts and settings. And then we need to go to expenses. And we need to, I'm sorry, it might be under advanced. It's under advanced. So category track classes. We need to click this and we need to turn it on. I can tell it to warn me when I don't use a class. I know how much we love those, okay? So that's step 1. Step 2 then is underneath this gear icon, you can go to all lists. Here's your class tab here under classes. Okay, we have no classes created. We've never used these before. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new class. My class is going to be called admin. Boom. I'm going to create another class called fundraising. Now I'm going to create a new one. This is going to become a fundraiser that my organization is running. Okay, so T-ball. And I'm going to make this a sub account of fundraising. Okay, so main account, sub account. Okay. That's internal use for me. All right. So then now let's go back over to a transaction. We now need to categorize a few things with classes so we can see what it does on our financial statement. So if I click on here, bill and pay, now see I have an option here for classes. I didn't have this before, but I do now. I'm going to class that as admin. I'm going to hit confirm. Okay. So now if I go to reports, profit and loss, and I want to do more filters here by class. That did not do my comparison here. I want to show you by class. Okay. Then okay. I want to go back to classic view. This isn't there's our buttons. I was like, we need our buttons here. So I want to do this by classes, run report. So now I have admin, which is the class we created, and we put one transaction in it. Okay. And then everything else that we've categorized, all of training, is considered unspecified because we did not classify any of it because we didn't create them. So this is a very easy way to see what's going on. I see this used in real estate a lot. They have to keep track of all the properties, the individual income and expenses on each property. So your classes would be those properties. Again, nonprofits use them a lot. If you have more than one location or you're running multiple businesses through one QuickBooks account, this is a way to do that. Again, not sure pending size of businesses that at $100 a month, this is cheaper than if you had two $30 subscriptions. But you know, use it as you preference. But you can pull this to track specific projects as well if you named them as classes and then tied everything to it. It's another internal way to segment data. Okay. There are a max number of classes you can have. I think it's 40 based on the subscription. So then you would have to go higher if you wanted more than that. As you know, there's a mass number of chart of accounts that you can have. I think it's 250 in the subscription. And again, when you go over it, it prompts you to upload. Again, if you're archiving accounts, you're giving them back. So your account number might go up or down. It just depends. Okay. So we wanted to talk briefly about custom reports as well. Okay, so if I change this back to totals, and I run this report, you can see here there's customize. So underneath customize, I can click filter, and I can say I want to pull a report by a customer. In the nonprofit software, it might say donor. And then this is where you could pull based on a specific person, grant, project. You can see our project still exists, the P&L. So if I do that, I click run report. Here's the $100 we got in and the $355 we put out. So this is the same report as it was when we looked at it on projects, but you have to customize the report to pull it. If we want to pull it on just myself, click run report. There it goes. It shows the project and the main customer, pending what you're looking at. Okay. If we pull a different customer so that it looks different, totally different. Now there's no activity for that customer. So when you're doing projects, you can pull the reports individually and easily in the projects tabs, or you can customize this report. If you don't use the projects tab and you need to pull a custom report based on segmenting, you can pull it from here based on your customized tool. Now it looks like we have a couple questions, so let me look at our questions here. David says, if I decide to rearrange my class list that already has data to make subaccounts out of previous parents, will that mess up the data already entered? No, it will actually just move the data to the subaccounts. It will keep it all and move it all over for you. Okay, we're going to talk about a couple miscellaneous tools before we take our next break. So one of our miscellaneous tools that we don't really touch on a ton is that QuickBooks has the ability to integrate with softwares. This could be your POS system. This could be your online sales system. This could be a donor software for nonprofits. So if you look at your little bubble here and you click on it, we don't have any apps that we've integrated with, right? But maybe we need to find our app. And so you can open this tool and go inside of it and look at all the apps that run with QuickBooks. And you can set it up. What this does is this allows your data that you're doing from tracking all of your sales to come into here so that then when the deposits are hitting the bank account, you have the ability to tie it together. Okay. Sometimes there's software here that you need an additional software as a secondary layer to bring more information over from whatever you're using. The best example I have with this is Shopify. Sometimes with Shopify, you can move all the revenue over, but you don't get the receivables and you don't get the inventory adjustments without an additional layer of software. By no means is that my area of expertise, but it is something that I have come across and been able to refer somebody to somebody that does do that to help them find the proper bridging software based on what their needs are. QuickBooks made this module very basic, is the best way to put it. It brings in the sales. That's pretty much the only thing that this module allows you to bring in without doing an additional software. Some of them require additional fees for the integration. Some of them have gotten away from that. That's on a case by case basis. It would be hard for me to tell without looking at it on what it's doing. Once you've picked an app and you've integrated the app, which we don't go over because that could be a whole training class in itself. This module where it says go to my apps will show what app you actually have integrated, and then you can manage it from there, which is like how many flows you have, making sure that this stuff is syncing. This can be a manual integration, meaning you have to go into this module and sync it, or it can be an automated integration, meaning it's coming over automatically. Okay. Again, integration here can create duplicates with deposits in the bank if they're not matching together. Okay, so we've talked about matching over and over and over again. There are lots of areas that it can create havoc on your QuickBooks. The goal is to do it and minimize it and pay attention to it so that these two revenues coming into one go to one transaction when we're done. Okay. So I just want to briefly talk about that's a tool that you have so that you can pay attention to it. Okay. You have your help button here. If you need additional help, you can reach out to QuickBooks. They don't really have like phone support anymore, unless you have payroll service or you're really high end expert. But you can do chats a lot of times with people or request a call back and they'll call you for additional things. That it's pretty user friendly. Just something simple there as well. If you go down over here, you have a tool called My Accountant. This is a newer tool. Okay. We obviously did not add an accountant to our QuickBooks yet. So if I add myself, uh, let's see here, go back into my email here. And it might be in my spam folder again because it's definitely known for that. Oh, let's see. Give it a minute to come through. It should populate in the corner here. But this portal here, as we're waiting for this to populate, we'll activate it, is a way for you to drop data to your person that's doing your bookkeeping for you if that's not you. You can upload statements securely without giving them access to certain things. You can create a checklist. You can send tax documents this way. Um, and then they have access to it. You can make sure that you can see when they're checking it, when they're working on it, those types of things. So it's a really cool tool. This tool is even magnified even better in the nonprofit software, which we talk about in the next class. And so you definitely have some options when it comes to utilizing this tool. It is a new tool. QuickBooks also, as you can see here, no accountant, no worries. Hire QuickBooks. So QuickBooks also has bookkeepers now. How that service works, I don't know. I have no idea what that costs, but it is something that they're working with doing. And this is how you would get that person their information. But this tool is open to whomever you have in your accountant portal to make your life easier and streamline and be able to match it. Okay. So this is again new in the last like year. A really cool tool, definitely something to pay attention to when you're working on getting data securely sent. Again, it's another way to keep data inside of QuickBooks. So you don't have to keep it on paper or keep it in both places. I do both. I print a lot of trees or I kill a lot of trees by printing and I do a lot of digital as well because you need it kind of in two pots no matter what happens. Okay. So definitely a tool to, play around in, can't mess it up. If you don't have an accountant, obviously it's not going to be set up like we have here. And for some reason, the QuickBooks emails are taking longer to come through. So maybe when we come back from our second break, we'll be able to see that. Okay. So let's go ahead and take our second break now before we do our last section. We'll take another 10-minute short break. So come back at 11:04. And then we have 4 more areas to go through that are some are great, some are hard. So we'll go with them. They probably will have quite a few questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat while we're on break. We'll answer those first before we get started, but I will see you guys in 10 minutes. So let's go ahead and jump back in. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys. And then it does look like I finally got that email to try to activate the accountant portal for us. So let's go ahead and accept this invitation here. All right, so it says we're all set on that one. Let's get rid of my email here. So then let's refresh on our accountant screen. So there you go. So this is what it looks like. You can hit shared documents. We obviously don't have anything shared, but this is how you would add documents. Like I said, a secure way to send bank statements, loan statements, tax documents, all that kind of stuff. You can have requests based on things that you want, or the accountant can request to you on things they need and have due dates and those types of things. So it's a good way to create some good expectations. It's a safe tool to transport data, and obviously then you can see how often they're doing your information. So just like we talked about briefly. Okay, it looks like we had a couple questions. So let's see what our questions are. Okay, that wasn't a question, but that's all right. So, all right, so we're going to talk about journal entries now. Okay, so journal entries can be a controversial topic. I personally do not like journal entries. I use them few and far between. A lot of people might feel differently about that. The reason I say I use them few and far between is journal entries are not auditable. Uh, Meaning that they are designed to be things like adjustments that need to be done one off, adjustments that are done for tax purposes, or adjustments for items that do not have their own register. Okay, so for example, depreciation is a great one. At the end of the year, your accountant tells you how much your depreciation was based on your fixed asset schedule. You need to stick that expense in. You need to stick it on the balance sheet. You also need to put it into your profit and loss. So that would be an item you would do an adjustment for. Your accountant um, makes any changes, you want to do a journal entry. If you're creating a loan and a fixed asset, you want to do a journal entry. As far as journal entries go, people are like, oh, I use them for transfers of money to accounts. You don't need to do that inside of QuickBooks Online. Oh, I use it to categorize all my expenses on my credit card. Yeah, that's a no. Use your register for it. Okay. Because you're doing more work by manually entering it in a journal entry than if you just did it through the import tool or the integration feature or through your transaction tab. Okay. So journal entries are one-off items. Now, if you go over here and you click new and you go to journal entry, it's under other journal entry. It's going to bring up our journal entry tab. Okay. Journal entries have to balance on both sides, credits and debits. All right. So if you want to adjust an item, so we'll do depreciation. Okay. Depreciation is under other expense. We're going to say we have 1,500 in depreciation. I'm going to date this appropriately. So for 2024, and then amortization. Well, we have no fixed assets, so I'm just going to call it fixed assets. Okay, that's where I'm going to credit it. Fixed assets is going to be fixed assets. Amortization, that's what we want. We want to hit save. Okay, there you go. Fine, we'll do it this way. Works. Okay, so then I can hit save and close, save and new, save and new. This transaction has no classes. This is the warning we told it to tell us. We're going to just go ahead and go without it. You can see the classes are listed here. Okay, so now it tells me my journal entry was saved. Okay, if I go to this little time icon here, I can see previous journal entries. You can go back and click on it and open it. Okay, you can, let me move this little black guy out of the way. There we go. You can do here, you can copy a journal entry and change it to 2025. Oops, 12/31, 2025. You can predate it again, save it new. Okay. Now, if you go look at your financial statements, so if we go to reports, balance sheet, go back to classic view here, fixed assets. And it would be a negative number because we would be depreciating off of it, just so we're on the same page. This is correct. If you had fixed assets put in, which we did not put in for training purposes, but would be put in, then you would see a negative number to offset the depreciation to give you the new value of what the asset would look like. Okay. So if you go over to your other financial statements here, so that was the balance sheet. So if you go to the P&L, and we want to kick this back even another month so that it will show this transaction. And classic view here. And we want, oh, it didn't flip it backwards. Run report. Depreciation. Okay, so journal entry, put it on balance sheet and P&L, adjustment purposes. Okay, again, icon, go to journal entries. If you click here, you can adjust them by opening a previous one, make any changes. You can put customer names in, you can put classifications in, you can change the numbers to match dates or say year-end entry or CPA entry or any of those types of things, okay? If for some reason you don't like the journal entry or the journal entry is not correct, you can either delete it or you can reverse it, okay? Reversing it means that it's going to take the debit and put it in the credit and the credit put it in the debit. And then when you look at your final statements, it's going to show 2 transactions, but they net to a big old 0. Okay. I personally delete if it was me. Okay. The reversing can get confusing. You can list tons and tons, like you can have huge journal entries. Okay. You can also attach proof. So if your accountant at the end of the year gives you a list of what the journal entries are, I would attach the proof so you remind yourself what it is. You can type in a description so you know depreciation on a 2019 Ford Explorer, whatever you might be depreciating. Okay. If you need to copy it, you have this copy button up here as well. Okay. And then if you decide, I don't need to do it, you can hit X and it goes away. Okay. Now it looks like we have a couple questions about journal entries, so let's take a peek. Says, would you use a journal entry to adjust petty cash? We have petty cash in our office that is added or taken away for various small income and expenditures. You can, yes, but honestly, your petty cash should be set up as an account, like a bank account in your chart of accounts. And when you get a receipt from it, you should be recording the transaction in that general ledger that way. So if you're on the main screen, so if we go to our dashboard screen, you click where it says new in your black bar, and then you go journal entries. Remember, you can also search it here. Create a journal entry, and it'll bring you there as well. Carolyn, I'm going to need a little bit more information. It says, do transfers now support the use of locations? We have been doing transfers using journal entries because we have locations which we use for contributions with or without donor restrictions. Underneath we only have classes set up, but if you have locations set up as well, your journal entries should show class and then also an option for location. So if that's what you're asking, the answer is yes, as long as that is turned on. We don't have locations turned on. That's why you don't see it here. Transfers also do support the location. So if you look under transactions, and so I'm going to click on this and I'm going to click record as a transfer. Let's see here. Oh no, it doesn't. You'd have to categorize it. The category would be the account you're transferring to, and then it would have class and location. If you're using this record as transfer, it doesn't give you that option. It actually doesn't give the class option either. Kind of surprised about that. So you would just use the categorize tool. Categorize it to where you're transferring the money, and then use your class or location tool. That would be your workaround. Oh, to see previously entered journal entries. So if you go in here and you go to journal entries, and then you click this little clock icon in the top left-hand corner, it'll see show more, and it brings up all your journal entries that you have. Yes, a journal entry for depreciation is considered a one-off because it's an annual entry. That's exactly it. Now, if you have monthly depreciation, obviously some organizations are pickier about that. You would still put depreciation in as a journal entry because it's not a transaction that's actually coming out of a bank account. There's no money movement. So you'd have to put in a journal entry because how else would you do it? Says, can we use journal entries to enter detail on reimbursable employee expenses in a month? If you're reimbursing an employee, those expenditures should be shown on the check or the payroll that you're giving them the money in, not as a journal entry. Can you use it as a journal entry? Sure, but then you're doubling that entry by then creating however you're giving them the money, where you should just do it once on that actual location. Yeah, so Gwen says, I have a savings account at a bank that does not have QuickBooks app or download into QuickBooks. Is that when I would manually add a bank account? Yes, that is correct. You would manually enter it and manually enter the transactions. It says, can you show journal entries for loans? Sure. So let's go over here and go journal entry, journal entry. So if you have a loan, 90% of the time it's because you used it to purchase something, right? So a car payment, okay? So what you're going to want to do is take a date for this journal entry. And let's do, I want to, oh, we're in 2025. Let's go back to like today's date, May 15th. So the loan is going to be Citizens, 'cause that's who I bank with, loan. And then again, we use the ending account numbers. I just picking random numbers just so we're on the same page. Okay. Just a refresher on how to create an account. We want this to be an accounts payable. We're going to hit save. Okay. And then what we bought was a 2021 Jeep. And I'm going to add the Jeep because we need this account as well. This is going to be my fixed asset that I purchased. And we're going to call this furniture and fixtures, works for me. Okay. So we need to debit the loan. Let's say we make it 40,000, make it easier. And we're going to credit the asset for 40,000. That's just what we paid for the loan. Okay. And I'm going to hit save and new. It wants a person. Helps if I can spell. Sends. Save and new. So then if we go over here, and I always look at my reports because journal entries are really easy to flip backwards and forwards and frontwards and backwards. Okay. Depends on what you're trying to do. And then switch this to classic view. And as you can see, I flipped it because you should never have a negative asset or a negative loan. Okay. So it's really easy to spot that they're negatives. So you would click on it from here. You can open the journal entry from here. And you would make the correction. Save and close. Now you'll see that your asset is worth 40,000 and you have a loan for 40,000. Okay. Sorry, it keeps trying to do the new reports. I don't like the new reports, guys. So citizen loan, 40,000. Here's my Jeep. Jeep, 40,000 right there. Okay. So it's an easy way to spot check it. Again, I told you that the first journal entry we did would show a negative number because after depreciation, my assets are worth 38,500. So that would be accurate, but you need your assets to be positive and your loan to have a positive balance. Okay. So that's what you're doing with that. If for some reason you have a loan and you didn't purchase something, meaning you have a line of credit, things like that, those would be things that you just set up and integrate. So credit cards, you have balances on, they're not, loans, those types of things. But you would create them in your chart of accounts, and then you would be able to say like, oh, I moved money into my bank account that was pulling from a line of credit. So your line of credit would get bigger and your bank account got the cash. So the only time you're doing a journal entry is if you have a loan, but you didn't output all the cash for the asset, right? Now you're going to have titles, taxes, fees. They could be a lot more detailed. I did a basic journal entry for A, to show you can flip them very easily, and B, to show you how to put them on the books. But there's a lot more detail that might be on your tax, title, and fees out the door on a vehicle. Okay. So the down payment would be money that's come out of the bank account. So it's either going to be a check or anything like that. So you would show it either through your transactions tab or you can add it on the journal entry. I would probably show it based on the bank transaction tab for simplicity purposes. So then the other question was, how do you allocate interest rates for the loans? You don't allocate on the P&L or balance sheet the interest rate. You know what it is. And then when you put a transaction in or you make that payment, you split the transaction based on principal and interest. And that's how you see your interest expense. And we talked about splitting transactions last time. All right. Any other questions about journal entries? Okay, perfect. So we're going to talk about receipts. This has been, people have been asking questions about the receipts. Okay, so if you go under the transactions tab, you have a receipts bucket right here. Okay. So you can make a purchase on your computer, download a receipt, and you can port it in this way. Okay. We can attach receipts in a couple ways. This feature here, receipts, is used more for like the mobile location. So you take a picture of a receipt on the road and it's going to put it in this bucket. And then whomever's doing your bookkeeping needs to take that receipt and tie it to the transaction that's actually happening in the bank account. Okay. So if that's the case, then you're going to see under receipts, you'll see the receipts here that are listed. So I'm going to flip over just to our PowerPoint to show you what those kind of look like. Because we don't have any receipts loaded in here, obviously. So you can drag and upload a browser, like we talked about. If somebody had already snapped a receipt, it's sitting in the for review bucket, and then you can see the receipt. Okay. Then you would want to hit review, and that's going to open it up for you to fill out whatever information is actually on that receipt. So who, what account it came from, the date, where it's being categorized, and all those types of things. Okay. And then you hit save and next, and it goes on to the next receipt. Okay, so same thing here. If it was for review, it's going to be located here. Okay, you have your upload right here. It might look a smidge different. That picture's a little outdated based on their new module, right? And then you can obviously upload receipts. If I can get rid of this warning here, upload receipts here. I'm going to refresh my screen. I need that warning to go away. I cannot navigate right there. Okay. So upload receipts, upload receipts. I'm going to grab a random receipt. Let's see here. Oh, it didn't like that format. Hold on. It has to be a PDF format here. Mm. And you could see it told me this one failed and it's waiting for this one to process. Okay, so here's the receipt I loaded. It now is under for review. So if you upload them, again, uploading the way we did it is the same as doing it from your phone, snapping a picture, okay? Other than that you're on the road and then you don't have to worry about keeping track of it or collecting receipts from employees, okay? Click review. Gives you all sorts of random information. Again, this is not necessarily a real receipt. It was a PDF of something, but you could select who you're paying, where it goes, the amount. You don't need to add an attachment because you already got an attachment. Save and close. Oh, I need to tell it where it's going. Well, it put it in the bill tab. So if we go under expenses, bills, here's the one we just created. But had I actually told it that I don't want it as a bill, which I can't do from this screen. But when you did, let's load another one. Let's do transactions, receipts. Let's upload a receipt. Pick another random PDF in here. Review. Instead of putting it as a bill, I want to put it as expense, and then it prompts which account you want to do it in. So you have options. All right, it looks like we have some questions. So if the owner does a loan to the company, how would you do that? That would be a journal entry. You would put the loan to owner, and then it would offset from the owner's equity account. Or you could just put when the deposit is made into the account, you could categorize it that way as the owner's loan, whatever you name the loan. Says the email to send receipts change. Now it says expenses. Does the earlier email address still operate? David, from what I understand, the answer is yes. David says, do you let QuickBooks act on receipts without going through review? I do not. I review everything. It's an error for duplicates, things to be in the wrong bucket, a headache for me later to go digging and diving and finding it. And yes, it's a huge error for duplicates. If an owner does loans, you would credit the loan to give loan the balance and then offset it on the other side of the journal entry with a owner's equity. That was what I said about owner's equity. Or when they make the deposit to give the business the money, you could put it in as owner's loan, whatever you decide to call it, because the funds had to come from somewhere. But if you do a journal entry like we talked about with loans, you need to offset it with owner's equity. She said, so we make bills for invoices we receive, then the bank transactions come through as expenses. And when everything works right, we match them. I saw you added an invoice receipt as an expense. Is there any reason that you did that preferably? No, I added an invoice just as to show the load of a PDF. Those meant nothing as far as what we were actually doing, what those were as far as the receipt feature. I was showing you just how the receipt feature worked. It just happened to be a PDF that I had. Means nothing that it was an invoice. Says, how do I represent one company I own lending to another company I own? You would create loans between the companies. So the funds would come out of owner's equity because it's your money from another company you own coming into that company, and the loan would be named whatever the company name is, and that should show a balance on a loan, and then there should be a receivables on the other company to show that that money is due to them. It should show on both sides. Any other questions about receipts? Okay, perfect. So now let's talk about sales tax. So QuickBooks Online has a portal or a module that you can set up to manage sales tax. Okay. QuickBooks Online does not pay your sales tax. I can't emphasize that enough. Just because you mark it paid in QuickBooks Online to keep your records accurate does not actually pay your sales tax. You have to do that through the individual gateways of your organization, whether it's Ohio, another state, doesn't matter. Okay. But you do have to mark it inside of QuickBooks so that you don't look like you owe a bunch of money to the state when you don't actually owe a bunch of money to the state. Okay. So QuickBooks has an automated sales tax module you can turn on based on location, based on ship date, those types of things, or you can do it manually, meaning you only have one rate that you're tracking and you want everybody to be done that rate. Okay. You have to go through the wizard of setting it up. Okay. It realizes based on my address that I have 6.75% in Ohio. It's going to ask me how often I file, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. I'm on a monthly basis. And I am not registered at any other agencies. Okay. So it knows it's the Ohio Department of Taxation monthly. Now, again, by turning this module on, we're opening additional things on the back end of things we maybe have already covered. For example, sales tax can be charged on our invoices. So now if we go back to invoices, so sales, invoices, and we create an invoice, we now have a box that says tax. This did not exist before. Okay. So if you're charging sales tax, it needs to be checked. And then down here, you'll see it tells you taxable subtotal that we need to do sales tax by an automatic calculation, or you can add a rate if you want to change that, right? And then it gives you a total invoice. These were not here before. These are new things because we opened that module. Okay. Now go back over here to taxes and go to sales tax. Oops, sorry, getting wizards again. Taxes, sales tax. You'll see it tells me I started it in May. You can look at this year. You can look at all last year, last quarter, last month, those types of things. Obviously, we have no data in here, so we're not going to show anything. But if you look at this year, it will show that we opened it. You can review your sales tax info, and it's going to show you gross sales, non-taxable, taxable, and the tax amount that you need to pay. And then you can view the reportable liability report, and it's going to bring you to another report here to show the same data. Customer names, taxable, where it's taxable, how much rate, yada, yada, yada. Okay. And then when you have a sales tax filing that is due, which we don't, so it's not going to populate here. But when you're on this review your sales tax, down here, there's a button that says make sales tax payment. pay tax liability, whatever that button says, okay? You would click that and then you'll go through the rest of the wizard to do it. So let's click back over to our training PowerPoint where we talk about it. Down here, you're going to get this where it says record your tax payment. Then it's going to bring up what you're paying, what bank account, how much, who the payment is to, and then you hit record payment. Okay. That then is going to then tie to your transaction when it clears your bank account. And you should have an option again to match transactions because you marked it paid on here, which is putting it into your register. So then when your register syncs in from the transaction actually populating in 24 hours or however long it takes for the payment to come through, you can match it so that it syncs with this transaction and becomes one versus showing two. Okay. It's important that it's marked paid in here so that this data does not populate on your balance sheet forever. Okay. Because here in Ohio, we're a middleman for sales tax. We collect it, we pay it out. We don't claim revenue on it. It's not a deduction. We collect it, we pay it out. We're just the middleman. We're just washing the money through. Okay. So if you collect it and you never pay it out in QuickBooks, then it looks like you're holding on to all that money and the state thinks you owe them money or something's not right on your financial statements, right? So you never want that to be the case. Take the money in, mark the money paid, pay it out. Okay. But when you really pay sales tax, you pay it through the gateway or the e-tax site, whichever you use, right, in Ohio, to make the actual payment based on location. But your data, the numbers that you need are here. This is an area that can get messed up though. So if you've never marked it paid in here before, you have a bunch of transactions that say money's due, money's due, money's due, money's due, and you have money sitting on your balance sheet that would look funky, okay? So again, this doesn't really pay it in real life. This is marking it internally so that when the funds actually leave your bank account, you've tracked it properly in your accounting software. And then you need to actually use the report from here to file it where it needs to be filed properly. Okay. Any questions about sales tax? You can edit your settings from here. You can manage tax care categories. I personally I only have one location I charge sales tax on. So I would do a manual where, because I don't want it to pick up on other counties because I'm not actually, even though a customer might be located in another county because they came into my store and bought it, I would be charging the sales tax for my county. So I don't want QuickBooks to get confused when I update customers' information as far as addresses and stuff, when that might not be where the location is for sales tax tracking purposes. Okay. QuickBooks also does not register you for sales tax. So you can tell QuickBooks you have sales tax, but you still have to register with the individual states or individual organizations that you need to register for. Okay. QuickBooks offering this feature is just so you don't have to manually factor it. Okay. Looks like we got another question. It says owner's equity for a loan as a credit. How is it debited on the journal entry? So if you're doing a loan, one side is going to be the loan name and one side is going to be the owner's equity account. If you as an owner are putting money in that you want to be tracked on the books, that's if you're using a journal entry. If you're depositing $10,000 into your business account, when that transaction deposits, you can name it the loan, owner's loan or Ann's loan, and you can do it that way. If you do a journal entry, one side has to be credited, one side has to be debited. Depends on what type of loan and what you're doing with it. Owner's equity is just the offset to say you put the money in as an owner to create the loan. I don't want that to be confusing. Any other questions about sales tax? Okay. While we're in the tax portal here, I want to talk one last piece about the 1099s that we talked about with the contractors. So as you can see here, there is a 1099 feature. I told you guys that QuickBooks could do it. This 1099 is going to go right in with your contractors. Okay, so I don't have any contractors. 2024 is not ready, right? But if I wanted to prepare 1099s, it walks you through a wizard. I'm going to prepare my own. I don't want to pay them for it. Okay. And then it tells you the information. So I don't have my EIN in here, so it's not going to let me go through. So this module is everything has to be filled out or it's not going to let you do it. Okay. But it's under over here, taxes, 1099s. 1099s play into your contractors and vendors. But just know that although you play under payroll, you have contractors, that's not where you see the 1099s. You can pull them under the tax screen. Okay. Just wanted to share that as we talked about it briefly. All right. Then the last thing we want to talk about is reoccurring transactions. So reoccurring transactions are transactions that we set up that come up every month. This could be depreciation if you do it on a monthly basis. This could be a rent payment that doesn't change very often. Could be a car payment that doesn't change very often. An insurance bill that doesn't change very often. A utility bill. The goal of reoccurring transactions is to make your life easier. Okay. So if we go up to our gear icon here and we go underneath lists, you'll see reoccurring transactions. We don't have any in here yet. So let's make a new reoccurring transaction. Step 1, new. You can make a bill, check, credit memo, deposit, an estimate, an invoice, an expense, a journal entry, payment. The list goes on. You can almost make anything inside of here reoccurring. Okay. Items that we would make reoccurring are items that change very few and far between. So a car payment for 3 to 5 years, the same dollar amount every month, that would be a great reoccurring transaction. Appreciation, great reoccurring transaction, same for at least a year. Okay. Utilities, insurance would be one. It's the same for a year. Okay. As far as like your gas bill, unless you're on budget, it probably changes kind of frequently. It would be hard to do a reoccurring transaction. You'd constantly be editing it. Okay. The goal is not necessarily to edit it. Invoices, reoccurring. If you charge your customers the same dollar amount every month until further notice, that would be a great way to make reoccurring transactions. Okay. If you do a journal entry, again, depending what the journal entry is for, might be a great way to do it. Okay. But any of these types of things you can set up. So we're going to do invoicing as an option. So let's make a reoccurring invoice. Okay. So we're going to name this consulting. Oops. Let's do bookkeeping package. Okay. We're going to hit save template. Oh, for once. We want to create this, 5 days in advance. We want it to automatically send emails. The start date for this is going to be the 16th. It ends by 12/31 out of safety. Go through the end of the year. You want this to repeat monthly, once a month. On the first day of the month, hit save template. But still doesn't like something I've selected. Let's see. Save template. Let's make it here. Won't let me save anything. Let's refresh and try again. Call it template. Scheduled 5 days in advance. Automatically send emails. Start date 6/1. I'm going to say it never ends and see if it'll let me do it that way. You have one or more errors fixed. I don't have any errors though. Oh, it wants a customer over here. All right, now it's save template. Keeping 100. All right, so you actually have to create the invoice before it'll let you save the template. There was our problem before. So then now if I go back up here to lists and I go to recurring transactions, there's the one we created. So I can edit this. I can pause it, duplicate it, delete it, just depends on what I'm trying to do. So if you're creating a template, the template is by individual customer. So if you have invoices that go out every month, you have to create, you can duplicate this and change the customer and keep doing it. But that's how you would do that. Okay. If you want to do a bill so that your rent populates every month, obviously we would do it inside of here as well. So new, let's do a bill. Again, create the bill. So Holman's Holding is my landlord. This is going to be a scheduled. I want it 5 days in advance, monthly on the 1st, start date 6/1. We're going to call it rent 825. Save template. Yes. Now you can see that it tells you what type of transaction it is too. Okay. And again, edit, duplicate, pause, skip date, any of those types of things that you have options for. Okay. Now you can do it from inside certain things. So if you go into journal entries, make reoccurring, and it sets you up for the wizard from right inside of here. Okay. Same for if we go over here to the bills, expenses, bills, add a bill, create a bill, make reoccurring, and it sets you up for the template. So you don't have to be in that list of reoccurring transactions. That's just where you would go to edit them and change them. You can create these as reoccurring as they're going. Same goes for invoices. So let's go into an invoice. Sales invoice. Create an invoice. Let's see here. Create a customer. Manage. And then it's under one of these modules here. Scheduling. So make this invoice reoccurring. And then it's going to want all the information you have to put in. Okay. So it's called scheduling in the new view. And then you fill out again, 1st of every month. Do you want it print later, send later? What are the reminders? You fill out all of these features here. Okay. Reoccurring transactions is another thing similar to creating a rule. The difference is the rule is for the automatic integration of transactions that are being synced. Reoccurring transactions are the other side of it that you have to enter the data for it, or categorize it. And if you're creating the reoccurring transaction, you just have to make sure that when it syncs through, it matches. Okay. So they kind of tie hand in hand. Just one is for the stuff syncing in, the other is for stuff that you're creating inside of QuickBooks. Okay. So it looks like we have some questions. So let me take some questions here. When I am in 1099, it doesn't show my subs. Are you looking at current year or older year? Do you have your contractors created? There's some custom settings that could be hindering that as well, Ellen. It might be something that you and I need to work with on an individual basis. So it says, I was hoping this reoccurring transactions would be the way to make rules for transactions automated at the bank. Example, monthly fees, our website charges to the debit card. Is there a better way to do that? I would use the rule feature. So underneath here, you can still go underneath all lists. And then there should be, actually, I lied. Go to transactions and go to rules. And then you can create a new rule for the transactions that are syncing from the bank account. So this is one way to manage those rules, create those rules. You can also do it from inside of the transaction. This is a brief review. We talked about this. If you open the transaction, you can create a rule. So once you create the rules, then all this stuff will automate. says, how do I
Hey,
discontinue
hey,
a
Ann,
reoccurring transaction? Yeah.
can you give us an example of what a rule might look like?
Yes, absolutely. So underneath rules here, I have Verizon. So I'm going to hit edit on this so that you guys can see it. I pay Verizon every month for my business cell phones, right? So I want Verizon when the money comes out of my accounts, doesn't matter which bank account I selected, to be categorized under expenses for utilities. So now when Verizon comes through on my bank transactions, they're going to show a rule is there. Okay. Now I could tell it to auto confirm them. I'm not going to do that personally. I don't like to auto confirm, but and I can hit save. So you would create rules for everything in here that stays the same from a vendor perspective. So all your utilities, although the dollar amounts change, they can be a rule to go into those utility buckets, but they couldn't be a reoccurring transaction because the dollar amounts change. So that's the difference between the two. What you wouldn't want to use a rule for is like a gas station, because you might get gas one trip, you might get a snack another trip, you might get both the third trip, right? And if you created a rule and said everything should just be shoved into fuel, it would be inaccurate because not every time you went to the gas station, you got only fuel. Okay. Does that give you, Ed, does that clear up you maybe what you think the question might be?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
Okay.
So it kind of has to do with how you want that money routed into your system, kind of a thing.
Correct. Yes.
No,
1000%.
perfect. Thank you very much.
So as far as getting rid of a reoccurring transaction, so if you go into reoccurring transactions, again, you can get to it from transaction, reoccurring transaction, or up here underneath lists, okay? If you scroll over, you can click here and you can click delete, pause. Pause means it stays in your list it's created, but won't actively create the transaction until you tell it so, okay? But delete or pause. So the question is, so you can create reoccurring invoices for AR and AP. That is correct, yes. So Kate says we are switching banks. Are we going to need to redo all the rules because the same items will be coming out of a new account? Kate, the answer is no. You need to edit the rules. So if you go into rules and you click edit, where it says only whatever bank account, change it to all bank accounts so that it will accept the new bank account. So when you sync the new bank account, it's in here, select all accounts. It will then transfer the rule to do it in any bank account that exists in QuickBooks, not just the one you had prior. So Gwen says she started QuickBooks in 2025. 2024 was done on Excel worksheet and given to accountant to file taxes. If we wanted to enter 2024 information in QuickBooks, would it be best to do so to get the bank to send me all the transactions in my account, or is there an easier way to do this? Gwen, if it was me and you're just trying to data dump, I'd probably do a massive journal entry as a starting entry for 2024 transactions and make sure the journal entry looked like the tax return. If you want to spend the time to redo the work you already did in the Excel sheet, then you could put it individually. That's just a lot of work. So Norm says an issue I have that has never been addressed is why did Intuit base QuickBooks, not base QuickBooks Online on the same format as QuickBooks Desktop? With a few exceptions, this is a much superior program. This is a great question. QuickBooks Online, in my opinion, of all the years I've been using both, has come a long way. It is supposed to be a simpler used platform with less customization and bells and whistles. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent is not my opinion. I'm not a developer for QuickBooks. Um, However, it's supposed to be available at your fingertips, which is why it's considered more basic. And so that would be why I think it's simplified. Integrate, send invoices, get payments, mark stuff tracked, produce reports, where desktop has way more bells and whistles than that. And yes, they don't even run remotely close to the same as far as commands go. About the only thing that looks the same is the ledger. Norm, you'd have to ask QuickBooks. I don't think that at this point they're going to change their mind on it. But that was the goal behind QuickBooks Online, was that it was supposed to be um, used for smaller organizations to be more at their fingertips. Obviously, with the price increase of desktop, there is a lot more use in QuickBooks Online, so we may see a lot more of that change. Okay, we have one question that I have not really technically talked about and we don't really talk about, which is inventory. Okay, and so we have a last few minutes before we run out of time here. Um, it says, is there a good app that helps handle counting for inventory tracking, SKUs, those types of things? Harry, this ties into not super my area of expertise. There is a way to bridge that. So if you use a Shopify that has all your SKUs in your inventory, then you need a middleman software to then get QuickBooks to at least keep your inventory number accurate, and your accounts receivable accurate. Uh, that middleman could be a plethora of options. I'm happy if you reach out to me to direct you to a gentleman I've made a partnership with that knows more about that. But there's a lot more layers to trying to find that out. QuickBooks Online itself being simplified does not manage inventory well, if really at all. And it doesn't manage um, some assets very well. So it's just meant to be, those are things I'd encourage to track outside. Um, my last seminar I ran for Canton Score, there was somebody that had a similar problem. They wanted it all to be integrated. That was when I found out that QuickBooks doesn't offer that, but there is a middleman software that helps with that bridge. What that costs, no idea, but I was able to make that relationship and still help that client in that process. So it can be done. It's just an additional software between your SKU software and sales software and QuickBooks. Okay. All right, and then last thing is we have a class next week, designed more for nonprofits, but obviously feel free to jump in. We are excited to be finishing up our seminar next week. That'll be our last session. And then I do want to give you guys a chance for any additional questions you have with the minute we have left. And then my contact information is still the same, so feel free to reach out to me directly. If for some reason you don't get in touch with me or need something additional, feel free to reach out to these guys at Canton Score. They're happy to relay the information as well.
Okay. Hey, Ann, is there a chance you could go to your browser and plug in score.org so we can show them, in case anybody missed it, how to get a copy of this, or
Yeah.
not a copy of it, but the recording of it?
Hmm. Absolutely. So it was score.org. We did /Canton last time.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And then here is QuickBooks Online for expert users. That's the registration. But where
Yeah.
did we, workshops and events, recorded webinars?
Yeah. Do the recorded webinars. Yeah.
And then down here, you'll see the webinars that they've recorded and when they were done.
Yeah. This would be all of them. But just to find the like the intermediate, I think you'd have to do Canton, click on
Okay, got
Canton
it.
there, and let it do its thing, and it should pop up there. There it is. Where's it? Well, no.
That's the expert to register.
Yeah.
Navigating cash flow. Um,
Maybe local workshops.
maybe, yeah, maybe we gotta do.
There it is. Recorded local Canton. Yeah. There
There
we
it is.
go.
QuickBooks Online for intermediate.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, no problem.
And thank you for your time, Ann. I mean, I'm not a I don't need to use QuickBooks in my life now, but you made it quite interesting. I enjoyed the thought process. It seems like it's somewhat easy to use actually once you know how to do it. So, and then I wanted to thank everyone that joined us, and hope to see you next week. Looks like we have no questions.
They did ask me to display my contact information one more time, so give me 1 second. I'll put that
Okay.
up for
Okay.
um
While Ann's looking, that SCORE website, you can also use it to request a mentor or to, if you have an interest, you're near retirement and you want to still stay active in the community, this is an excellent way to do that. So if you'd like to volunteer, use it as well. But okay,
and there is my contact information.
yeah. And if you have any trouble finding it or just uh, you can contact us as well. We can help. So, all right. All right. I'm going to pull the plug.
Perfect. Sounds good, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye bye.